Back here in SportsCenter, Dwyane Orsini alongside Max Bretas. We're in day 6 of NBA free agency, and all eyes and ears have been on Dwyane Wade. And our Brian Windhorst is reporting that Wade is close, or at least on the verge of a deal with the Chicago Bulls. We now welcome in Brian Windhorst. Brian, what do you have?
Well, Dwyane Wade is going to be a Chicago Bull. Right now, it's a matter of the Bulls completing a couple of trades to clear the necessary salary cap space for him. They are on the verge of completing a trade to clear off Jose Calderon, which will clear about $8 million more in salary cap space and push them into the zone where Wade will agree to a contract. They are also in negotiating with several teams to move Mike Dunleavy to clear his $5 million off. That will give the Bulls the $25 million necessary to sign Dwyane Wade to the type of contract has been requesting, and he is in position to accept their contract and sign tomorrow when free agents are willing to sign, leaving the Miami Heat after 13 years. He has entered serious negotiations with the Bulls this afternoon, who got serious about this deal, and barring any snags on these trades, it's going to happen. That is the intention. Now, because there's a couple of steps, specifically a couple of trades that have to happen, you can't say for sure that it's going to be done. They don't have the salary cap space right now, but it's gotten to the point where Wade believes that this is going to happen and he is going to be a Chicago Bull.
Brian, we know that the Heat only offered 2 years, $40 million, and Wade has wanted 2 years, $50 million. Is there still a chance that the Heat can swoop in here and try to make this work?
There's still a chance, but I think that ship has sailed. The Heat, prioritized Hassan Whiteside and Kevin Durant in free agency, and Dwyane was offended by that. Over the last 2 or 3 days, there's been an incredible amount of acrimony that has built up between the sides. And at this point, I'm not even sure it's about the money anymore. I'm not even sure that if the Heat could figure out a way to clear more cap space and find room that Dwyane would even be willing to do it. It got to the point where he felt like he couldn't go back there. I was talking to a source just now who said that Dwyane has been saying that he could never see himself playing anywhere other than Miami except to go home to Chicago. He's from Robbins, Illinois, just outside the city, grew up a Bulls fan in the Michael Jordan era, nearly signed with the Bulls in 2010, met with them on two different occasions 6 years ago this week. But ultimately, when LeBron James and Chris Bosh agreed to join them in Miami, he abandoned those plans, and he's gone back to that well. This isn't just about the Bulls. This is about what Dwyane perceives as a slight, the way the Heat have treated him over the last few years, and especially over the last week, that has put him in this position.
We saw that Mickey Arison Instagram that photo of his yacht outside Manhattan, and then he later met with Wade. Do we know anything about the details of that conversation? Was he willing to give him the money and make that happen at all?
I don't know what he said, but whatever came out of that conversation, shortly thereafter, the Bulls started ramping up, looking to make trades to clear salary cap space. Earlier today, some Bulls sources were telling me that they weren't even 100% sure that Wade was focused on them. They didn't want to begin to make moves to alter their team unless they were for sure that Wade was going to come to them. They didn't want to make trades on just a chance. So as soon as the Bulls started making moves and making serious trade calls to clear players, it became a signal that Dwyane's meetings with Denver today and Miami and Milwaukee, he had 3 other meetings in New York today, did not convince him to go to any of those places, and the traction has gotten started that he will sign with the Bulls.
At the start of this free agency, Pat Riley made very little effort to make this work with Wade. We saw him go and get Hassan Whiteside, then he chased Kevin Durant to East Hampton. Brian, do you know if Pat Riley's, was this his plan all along? Did he not want to make this work with Dwyane Wade?
I think Pat Riley prioritized Hassan Whiteside and Durant, as you said. I think they believed that Wade would be supportive of their plans and be willing to accept what they could do for him. And you can understand why Miami felt that way. He did that in 2010. He did that in 2014 when LeBron left. He took a pay cut to accommodate Luol Deng to be signed. He did that last year when he only signed a one-year contract when he, so that the Heat could be able to chase Kevin Durant this summer. And so you could see why the Heat just assumed that he would take what they had left over. And what they had left over was a formidable contract offer, 2 years and $40 million. However, Dwyane has put his foot down essentially and basically said, you need to find me some more money like you would find Durant some more money. The Heat did not do that, and ultimately they're going to lose him. He's 34 years old. It's questionable whether or not assigning him to a contract of this level is a prudent decision because he's had knee problems, although he's just come off his healthiest season in 5 years. It's possible that the Heat decided they reached a point with Wade where they weren't willing to commit that type of money to him anymore at this stage of his career. I'm sure there will be a lot of posturing. Obviously, this is a devastating blow to the Heat fan base. Dwyane was the guy who, when he announced he was re-signing with the Heat in 2014, and announced himself as a Heat lifer. They built an entire campaign in Miami around the Heat lifer movement. Dwyane carried the banner for that campaign. So this is a blow and not something that you really would have seen coming a month ago. But we really started to get feelings early in free agency that Dwyane was not happy with the way he was being handled, and the dominoes led to this point.
Brian Windhorst, thank you so much for that information. You've been all over the breaking news over the past 6 days in the NBA free agency. Again, Dwyane Wade on the verge of signing a deal with the Chicago Bulls. We're turning back to Illinois. Now, here's what Dwyane Wade meant to the Heat. He is the franchise leader there in almost every statistical category, but many of them not even close. Wade has scored more than double the amount of points than any other player in a Heat uniform and has nearly doubled up the field in assists, steals, and total win shares as well.
New on SportsCenter, Mark Stein and Brian Windhorst reporting the Bulls are on the verge of landing Dwyane Wade, believing they have trade partners willing to take on Jose Calderon and Mike Dunleavy to clear salary cap space. Wade from the Chicagoland area is coming home. He's coming home. You know what? After what was happening with the Bulls, I thought it'd be a long time before we would talk to Nick Friedel. But look at this. He's back. Nick, we heard. Nick, of course, covers the Bulls for ESPN.com as he chuckles away. We heard after they traded Derrick Rose, the Bulls, from Gar Forman, that the team was getting younger. What happened here?
Max, I got to tell you, on a personal level, I'm shocked that the Bulls did this because I thought there were a lot of people, more so than just Gar, that were ready to rebuild this roster. And the big question coming into the last week or so, especially around the draft, was were they going to move Jimmy Butler and blow it up completely? And now in the span of a few days, they sign Rondo, which a lot of people all around the league still can't believe. And they're about to lock in Dwyane Wade. So I think what happened for the Bulls is internally they didn't want the full rebuild. And the key for them is with Rondo, and we'll find out the contract deals here shortly with Wade, but it's short-term deals that they can get out of in the next couple years if need be, and then they can rebuild again. But just watching this team and the pieces that are in place, even with Rondo and assuming this Wade deal goes down and becomes completed, I still don't think the Bulls are that much better off than where they were last season.
Where do you think they fall in with the personnel they have right now? And we do know that some of these players will be on the move, some pieces so they can make it fit in the cap. Where do you think the Bulls fall in the Eastern Conference?
Max, I think a team with Wade and Rondo leading the way along with Jimmy Butler, who at 26 is still probably the go-to guy on this team. 5 years ago, this would have been great. Wade Wade's 55 years old. I think this is the part that a lot of Chicago fans are just shaking their head at right now because this team was ready for a total makeover, and they were ready to move pieces in place, and they were trying to develop an identity under Fred Hoiberg. And Fred Hoiberg, Max, struggled to develop his voice in that locker room, and the feeling was that a lot of the time he was too nice. And so what do? You keep Jimmy Butler, who rubbed a lot of teammates the wrong way with the way his ego developed in the last year or so, and you add Rondo, a noted coach killer, and Dwyane Wade, who's played his whole career in Miami. So count me in the group that is very surprised the Bulls have done this, and I just don't think they're that much better. But hey, they're winning the headline battle right now, and that's for sure.
You beat me to the punch. I want to ask you about that because we know Jimmy Butler and Derrick Rose that were at loggerheads at times last season, and now Derrick Rose is a Knick. And you mentioned the issues with Rajon Rondo and coaches. And Dwyane Wade, who even when LeBron James was in Miami, he seemed to be the leader of that team. Who do you think takes the reins, knowing these three personalities, not to mention the coach in the mix?
Well, Max, it's a great question, and it used to be Joakim Noah on this team. It wasn't even Derrick Rose. It was Noah who was the heart and soul of everything the Bulls did on the floor. Well, now Noah, as we know, is in New York with Rose, and so everybody thought, okay, this is now Jimmy Butler's team. Well, here comes Dwyane Wade. And Dwyane Wade doesn't want to take a backseat to anybody, although I will tell you in talking to both Wade and Butler over time, there is a mutual connection there and a friendship because they both went to Marquette. And so they both watched each other. Jimmy definitely watched Dwyane as he made his way to superstardom in the league. So it's going to be really interesting to see how it all comes together, especially with, oh, by the way, Rondo, who's coming into a locker room that was pretty fractured last season. So I would guess right now going into the year that they're still going to lean on Jimmy Butler to develop more as a leader, but with Wade in the fold and with his pedigree and history as a champion, I think that's the guy who's going to get most of the support right now.
How would you like to see them line up, Nick? Obviously, it's going to be a Fred Hoiberg decision. I think we can assume Rondo at 1, Wade 2, and Butler at the 3, or is this a situation where they interchange?
Yeah, it could be, but Max, I'd go with that prediction right now. The interesting thing to me is that the Bulls in the front office has kind of totally taken a 180 because when Fred Hoiberg was hired, it was Hoyball. It was let's run up and down the floor, pace and space, let's get guys open and start jacking up threes. And now you have Dwyane Wade and Rondo and Jimmy Butler, and none of the three of those guys are very good three-point shooters. So it seems like everything is turning around in a major way for the Bulls, and none of which was part of the original plan. Look, this team still has some talent now, and as much as I may not be a fan of the Wade signing, we know he can still play at a high level. You just wonder about the injury concerns. Same goes with Rondo. Can all these guys still play at a high level? And even if they do, Max, how good can they be? And that's really the reality here for the Bulls. It's more of a saving face in terms of a few more wins and potentially a playoff team, but I don't think this is any kind of team that contends next season in the Eastern Conference and feels like it has a legitimate chance to win a title.
You know, Nick, we haven't heard from you about what we have seen this last 5, 6, 7 days. As a guy who covers the NBA, how do you describe this free agent period?
The money is overwhelming. And Max, for context there, I've been at the Orlando Summer League the last few days, and I talked to Larry Bird, and even Larry was like, man, this is crazy. I mean, guys that played 20, 30 years ago are going, whoa, but he made a good point. He said when he was coming in the league, guys before him were yelling about how much they were making. So it's all part of the evolution. I think everybody involved is very excited. But you start talking to some agents and some coaches, and they'll tell you they're worried that they're not going to be able to get enough for their clients in the next couple of years, assuming the boom ends after next season's free agency. But for the time being, everybody's ecstatic with what's happened because everybody's getting paid.
Well, Nick, those kids at the Orlando camp have to be licking their chops because they're going to inherit the earth at this pace. They'll be making $40, $50 million. I mean, what can I tell you? I mean, it's the reality of the times. Nick Friedel, who covers the Bulls now with Dwyane Wade reportedly heading in that direction. Thanks for joining us, Nick.
Oh, you got it, Max.
Miami native Israel Gutierrez has covered the Heat and Dwyane Wade most of his career there in Miami. He worked for the Miami Herald before working for us here at ESPN. He's also host of the George and Izzy show on ESPN Radio. Izzy, my first question for you is, they've gone through this song and dance before. What do you think has changed?
Just time and experience, meaning they've done this before. And from Dwyane Wade's perspective, he hadn't seen the type of respect and the type of just adoration that he felt like he deserved from a franchise that he was most responsible for bringing 3 championships to, that he was most responsible for bringing LeBron James and Chris Bosh to, that he was the reason Shaquille O'Neal wanted to come to Miami, and they won a championship together in 2006. And all of that has been paid off in a way that really Dwyane hasn't been satisfied with. In this particular negotiations, you've got Pat Riley and Mickey Arison and the Miami Heat trying their best to bring Kevin Durant to Miami, and Durant and doing whatever it takes, meaning Hassan Whiteside would take a discount. They would move whatever bodies necessary to make that happen. And for Dwyane Wade, not nearly as much. And it really is just a cold and calculated way of dealing with what the Heat view and, most of America views as an aging superstar who, is not necessarily worth the money that these guys get paid. You think of Kobe Bryant and his final contract, of course. But in reality, this was a marriage that felt like it ended a bit early. And, a guy like Hassan Whiteside, that discount that he would have taken for Kevin Durant, that discount would have absolutely worked to keep Dwyane Wade in play, but he wasn't willing to take it. The Heat weren't willing to do enough to keep him happy, and that was enough for him to say, 13 years, and I'm still treated this way. It's enough. And we're in a time where player empowerment is what the NBA is about. And Dwyane Wade felt like he was always sort of strapped to the Miami Heat and doing what they pleased and not what he wanted to do necessarily. And while he got 13 years of amazing success in Miami and 3 championships, it still wasn't, this negotiation just wasn't the type of reciprocation that Dwyane Wade expected.
Yeah, he has never been the highest paid player on that team. And we saw Pat Riley signed Hassan Whiteside immediately. Izzy, what kind of message do you think that sent to Dwyane Wade that he took care of Whiteside and just sort of let him go?
It was, this is how he responded to that message. It was basically, a guy that's given you 1.5 years of quality basketball. And go back and look. Hassan plays his best basketball with Dwyane Wade on the floor. And Dwyane Wade knew that. And Dwyane Wade knew what his responsibility was in building up what we've seen of Hassan Whiteside. And yet, again, the Miami Heat not willing to necessarily do what it takes to keep Dwyane happy. And you would think, and look, I see both sides of this. I understand separating and parting ways with the superstar who's no longer what he was in his prime, and that the money is not worth, quote unquote, what he's going to provide for you on the court. But man, this is so much more than that. And Pat Riley and the Miami Heat's obsession with winning championships, which is what sports is about and what sports ownership and everything else is about, it has sort of consumed them. And it's ironic that Dwyane and his presence and his ability has allowed them to get to that championship and allowed them to be intoxicated by the winning, and so they choose to try to get that again rather than, please the guy who's brought them that feeling to begin with. And it's a very interesting dynamic, and it is what sports is about, and you have to deal with this type of heartbreak and this type of, divorce, if you will, from, player and city. And it's massive, and we just saw what happened with Kevin Durant, and that wasn't even as many years or at any championships at all. And so you could argue that this breakup between Dwyane Wade and the Miami Heat, or Miami, is just more intense and more severe than the breakup between Kevin Durant and Oklahoma City.
Izzy, I'm anchoring tonight with Max Bretas, who's from Miami, and he was explaining to me during the commercial break that sometimes Miami fans are a little slow to react to anything that occurs in sports. But we recently just saw in Oklahoma City. Quote, it was close to it. We recently saw in Oklahoma City, though, fans just absolutely crushed with Kevin Durant going out to the Warriors. We saw Miami upset once LeBron left Miami to go back to Cleveland. How do you think fans are going to respond to this?
This is the amazing part. Further, like even deeper, amazing success of Pat Riley. He has not only helped, and Dwyane, largely Dwyane, but, Dwyane, Pat Riley, LeBron James have not only helped turn Miami into a basketball town in a time where the football team has just been down, but Pat Riley and the Miami Heat have convinced this fan base that he's the one to trust. And there is a sort of sadness sweeping over South Florida right now, but given that Dwyane Wade went through these contract negotiations last year, and given that he went through it again this year, and, he did his part, which is not fantastic. He did his part where he made these public negotiations, and he made, last year in particular, put out some social media posts that did not exactly, make it look like he and the Heat were working together. And I understand that part. But down here, people are going to be saddened, but they also are going to feel like they've got the best of the best you could get out of Dwyane Wade. And now Pat Riley, they believe, is putting this team in position to build again and win another championship. And there's no doubt in the fans' minds in Miami that he will find a way to get his hands on a Russell Westbrook or some rising star and find a way to build around, the group that he has now, Justice Winslow, Hassan Whiteside, etc. But that trust has been built largely on the idea of having Dwyane Wade by his side and winning championships with one of the best shoot guards ever to play the game. And so it's going to really test the fan base's devotion of Pat Riley if he doesn't turn this around quickly, because then they'd say, man, we gave up on Dwyane Wade for what?
Exactly. Wade County is going to have to go back to being calling Dade County. Israel Gutierrez
Nice.
From the George and Izzy Show, thank you so much for joining us here live on SportsCenter.
Got it.